Are we on here? Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Richmond Ions Community Group. My name is Tom Coates, for those who don't know me, and there are a few people here that I think I may not know, so welcome to Richmond Ions. As some of you know, we are one of the oldest, if not the oldest, continuously operating Ions Community Group in the entire global network of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. We've been around since January of 1996. We're now in our 29th year, and we have been blessed throughout this time to have lots of good community support within the Richmond area. During the time of the COVID, we also expanded that somewhat to people not necessarily in this area by way of Zoom, and so we're twice blessed, as it were. We also have been blessed throughout the years to have excellent speakers be willing to take their time and address our group, and today is no exception. But as is usual, I'll tell you a little bit about IONS. IONS stands, as I just mentioned, for the Institute of Noetic Sciences. It is an organization founded by Edgar Mitchell back in 1973. Edgar Mitchell, for those who don't know, and we're getting to the point where people may have forgotten, there was an Apollo program back in started in 1969 and lasted till 71 or 72. And Edgar Mitchell was a lunar landing module pilot for Apollo 14. And as a result of him having made that journey and walked on the moon and so forth, like several of the others of those few who went to the moon as part of the Apollo program, he had a unity consciousness, or had a takeaway, which was a unity consciousness experience as he was on his way back to Earth, and saw through the window of the module. He saw the Earth off in the distance as a pale blue dot, and he decided right then and there, as a result of that experience, to dedicate the rest of his life to the exploration of consciousness, especially the interface between science and spirit. He created IONS as a vehicle for that with the help of a large donor in 1973, and it continues today. IONS has always sponsored community groups throughout the world, and the number has fallen in recent years due to COVID and so forth. But there still are, I think, roughly 100 community groups around the world, none of which has programs that compare with ours. That's why we've really been blessed to have the support we've had, and so we're thankful for that, and what else do I have to announce? We have we subsist at this point purely on the donations, the contributions of our members. Our members are just those who show up. We don't have any formal roster of membership. We don't have any qualifications for membership other than just showing up, and that can be either in person or online. And I will tell you that now, since COVID, to this month marks the 4th anniversary of when COVID showed up on these shores, and many of us have fully recovered from that. Some are still worried about COVID to this day, and that's fine. I will tell you this though: our group, at the time we started into COVID, of course we lost our venue. We had to go on Zoom only for about a year and about 15 to 16 months, and when COVID began, we had monthly participation by people coming in person of on the average of 80 to 85 people a month. It's never come back to that, although we're beginning in more recent times to build our numbers and so forth. And we have always operated on a shoestring, and so I just want to let you know we had a little bit of a surplus when COVID began. We've been operating on that surplus ever since. In the last 48 months since COVID began, there have been maybe 2 or 3 months, only 2 or 3 months out of the 48, in which the contributions at the meetings have equaled the costs, the monthly costs. And so I'm bringing this to your attention because we are reaching a point where our surplus is no longer going to support us. And if the contributions do not increase, we're going to have to start, which we hate to have to do, but within 6 months of a point in time where we're going to have to start asking people to contribute a specific amount to attend the meeting, which we've never done before and we'd prefer not to do. But that's where it is, and it would not be fair to bring that on without some forewarning. But in any event, I want to bring that to your attention, and I ask as always that when the love offering basket comes around, that you dig into your pocket at the point where it reaches the bottom of your heart, and where the two intersect, put that into the offering basket so we can continue. I think that's all I have for now. For the moment, Susanna has got announcements about some programs she's got.
Thanks, Tom. So just a reminder, we have our spiritual practice series as a companion to the noetic science talk that includes today. It's the first Wednesdays, and I've been passing around a handout of the flyer for that. And Dan put a link to the announcement in the chat in Zoom. So make sure you join us for that, because then we're bridging the science and the practice of spirituality. Also, the handouts for this got lost, but the sign up for the mailing list is going around. We have a number of classes, community classes. So we have clairaudience, clairvoyance, and clairempathy starting. So 3 different classes starting in April. They're great. Our class participants say they have so much fun and they build their confidence. And so the link for the class poster is in the chat. We're going to be having a new list of classes, workshops, and retreats coming out in the next week or so. We're having a retreat, our first retreat next week, and it's closed to enrollment currently. But it's about really getting in deep, and because we don't believe in spiritual bypass, do we? So we're helping everybody do that deep inner work. And by the way, since it is also they are IONS courses, it does bring in income when you register and participate. So it will help us maybe defer the start of the required payment or decrease it. So you can edify yourself and support the organization at the same time. Again, both links are in the chat. Thanks for putting them in, Dan.
Thank you, Susanna. Also, today we have one thing I forgot to mention in terms of the donations is that those who are attending online also may donate through our PayPal function by going on our website, and we invite you to do so. There also, in addition to that, if for those who are like me and technologically challenged, you can always write a check. They're acceptable as well, and that can be mailed to the address on the flyer. Just make it out to Richmond Ions, and that's all you need. And so we appreciate all you can do on that in that regard. I mentioned a few minutes ago that we have been blessed throughout our history with wonderful speakers. Today is no exception to that. We have a lady named Ellen Mahloy who has developed a global network of psychic teachings and so forth, who, by her own history or the story at least we put in the flyer that she'd given us, she went from what I've thought of as 0 to psychic in about 5 seconds back 20 years ago. when she had an angelic, an archangelic download that opened up her pineal gland, otherwise known as the third eye. And I first encountered her at a function of Spirit, Mind, Body that Carol Louis had brought her to some time ago. She's an absolutely wonderful presenter. She's got a lot to tell us, and she is also got her own TV network. She's spreading the word in terms of every media method we have available. So, without further ado, I welcome Ellen Mahloy. Thank you very much.
All right, it's a little high for me, so I'm going to bring this down. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here. Susanna invited me, and I'm so thrilled because I don't get to speak that much in front of locals. The last, I guess, maybe 10 years or so, I've been raising a little incarnated fairy, and kind of joking, but not really. So anyway, so I've been doing a lot of stuff online, and I work in teleconference. I work on, well, not Zoom really, but anyway, I work on webinar. And so I work with people mostly in the United States, but some in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and Canada, of course, are practically part of the United States. And then we work with a fair amount of people in, in various other places. We're just trying to get interests from Africa, oddly. That's fun. So let me kind of jump into sort of a little bit about me. I am 55 years old, and the reason I tell you that is because I became psychic suddenly at the age of 33. I'm just kind of giving you a time frame. Prior to being psychic the way I am today, I was psychic, but I didn't know it. I didn't understand it because I didn't grow up in that kind of a culture. No one in my family was New Age. We never used the word psychic. We never used extrasensory perception or any of those terms. My father was raised Episcopalian. My mother was raised Southern Baptist. They couldn't agree. We didn't go to church much. So, but I grew up with this that was the kind of upbringing that I grew up in, was sort of a conservative Christian culture, just kind of traditional, normal, things. And I went to college, came up here to go to art school. So I went to VCU, and that's when I started meeting some unusual folk. Met some people who were, new agey, into herbs, have never heard of that before. So I met some psychic people. Actually, one of my girlfriends is from college was telling me, I see dead people. I'm like, really? I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I get out of college, and to everyone's surprise, instead of becoming an artist, I go off and I join the corporate culture, and I become a very high level project manager. I was at Capital One when it spun off from Signet Bank, so that dates me very much. I also helped launch Capital One Canada. I helped launch Sirius Satellite Radio. So I was like tooling along in life, kind of doing my thing, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm good. But other people kind of noticed there were some unusual things about me. So, for instance, I could figure out complicated technological things without any information. So I remember I got this job, and I was new on the team. I'd been there about 2 weeks, and the entire call center at Capital One went down. Capital One's a pretty big company. They got thousands of people waiting to answer phone calls, and all of a sudden, it's down. Nobody can do anything. So my boss is red in the face because he's that upset, and he's running around, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm only 2 weeks in. I cannot help you. So finally, toward, I guess it was hours of this, he comes and sits with me and says, I'm going to tell you what's wrong. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't think I can do anything for you other than be empathic and like just try to, support him emotionally. And so he starts telling me there's a this and 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 a this. And I'm like, okay. And I'm listening and I'm thinking, and I finally said, it's 2 problems. I was like, we got problem A and problem B, split the team, do this, blah, blah, blah. He just did it. He didn't even quit because they were so stressed out. So then at the end of the day, I'm putting my stuff together and getting ready to go home. And he comes to my office and he says, how did you know? And I said, how did I know what? He goes, how did you know it was 2 problems? And I said, I don't know. I said, I guess something you said tipped me off. And he said, no, I had no idea. So that kind of thing was frequent. Sometimes when we would have problems with computers, I would dream it. I would dream the code, or I would dream, like we had about 25 programmers in this one system that were coding. One of them was doing what's called hard coding. So hard coding means inflexible. And he was jacking up the system. And I was like, which one of these 25 guys is doing this? I have no idea. I dreamed it. And I dreamed where in the code he was doing it. So I printed it out the next day and I took a highlighter and I highlighted it and I went to his desk and I said, looky here, buddy. I got this figured out. You are hard coding. And he goes, oh, and he said, I didn't know you could read code. And I thought, I can't. I cannot read code. But I knew what he was doing. And I said, if I catch you doing this again, I'm going to report you. And he's like, yes, ma'am. And that was that. So what happened with me was I'm moving along in life and I think everything's great. Like I'm happy in my career. I'm happy with my friends. Happy with everything's going awesome. And I start getting sick. And I'm at my desk and I start having dizzy spells. A third of my hair fell out. My skin started to turn gray. And I'm going from doctor to doctor trying to figure out like what is wrong. And so the first doctor was like, well, it's obvious what's wrong with you. You're a stressed out female executive. I'm like, what? What? How is that? I was like, okay. He goes, you should do yoga. And I'm thinking, yoga? What the? I never heard of yoga. I had to go look it up. There was only one yoga place in town. It was Nora Posey, the only game in town. So I was like, all right, well, it's this gal. I'm going to this gal. So I go there. The yoga does not fix me. But she did a class on meditation, and boy, did I love that. That was amazing. Still didn't fix me. So I'm getting sicker, and I'm reaching the point where at this point my mother has cancer and she's been given a few months to live, and I think, man, I'm going to die. Like I'm having multiple organs that are failing. Now doctors are taking me seriously, but they don't have any answers. They have no idea what's wrong with me. So I happen to be dating a guy from California. Y'all met any people from California? They're a little different. So he knows I'm sick, and I was trying to explain to him, I've been to 25 doctors, that no one can figure it out. There's this and this and this. He goes, why don't you try alternatives? And I said, to healthcare? What would that be? And he goes, I don't know, like, acupuncture or chiropractic. And I'm thinking, chiropractic? I don't even have back pain. Why would anybody do that? And so he says, well, I guess you don't know about any of these things. Why don't we talk to my friend? I was like, okay. So he calls his friend up, and she's a psychic in California. And she says, oh, you must do the Reiki. I'm like, okay, all right. I've never heard of this, but I'm figuring it must be a martial art. It's like Tai Chi, right? That's what that must be. I'm like, okay. So she's like, no, seriously, you have to, like, this is really important. I'm like, okay, yes, ma'am, I'll sign up for a class in this here Reiki thing. Then, so we get off the phone with her, and I go to Google it, because that's what we all do, computer people, we Google it. And I'm like, what? This is like Japanese laying on of hands. I'm like, I didn't even know anyone did laying on of hands outside evangelical churches. And I'm like, and not to mention some sort of Japanese style whatnot. So I'm like, oh my gosh. And I thought, this is super, super far-fetched. And I'm thinking, well, who in Richmond even does this? This is the year 2001. So I did what I do. I just said, okay, God, look, this is pretty weird stuff. I don't know about all this. I said, but if this is what you want me to do, this is the path you want me to walk, then put a Reiki master in my path, and I will do this, no questions asked. Seems weird to me, but whatever, I'll do it. 2 weeks later, my California boyfriend comes home from his Kung Fu class, and he says, you're not going to believe this. My Kung Fu instructor is a Reiki master, and he's coming to our apartment this weekend, and you're going to learn Reiki. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my God. So I said I would do it. So I went ahead and did it. First class, it was incredible. It was just, I could feel the energy. I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Shortly thereafter, I got very lucky. I was at a Christmas party, and a Korean medical doctor came up to me and said, I do facial diagnosis in Korea, and you're very sick. I said, yes, I'm gravely ill. And she said, I know why. Come to my office on Monday. And she told me I had food allergies. I'd never heard of food allergies other than like kids who went into shock from, eating peanuts. They had anaphylactic shock. So I was surprised by this, and I changed my diet immediately. And what a surprise that was. I regained all my health. Within 3 months, 80% of my symptoms were gone. In 3 years, all of them were gone. I'm 55 today. Every time I go to a doctor, they ask me what statin and what high blood pressure medicine I'm taking. And when I say none, they're like, oh, okay, you're one of those. And I'm like, take my blood pressure. And they're like, oh, it's not high. I'm severely gluten intolerant. So I'm not a celiac, but I'm like one genetic marker below a celiac. So it's, for me, it's corn, dairy, and wheat. So if you're going to try and feed me, it's probably like fruit would be safe. So, all right. So anyway, what happened was I'm good. Like, I like my Reiki. I'm meditating. I'm having the time of my life. Things are good. I'm feeling good. I'm looking good. My hair's growing back in. As you guys see, hair's kind of a big thing for me. So things are going along well, and I'm happy. Then my boyfriend proposes, and the Reiki master guy, Kung Fu instructor, says, your wedding gift is Reiki Level II. I'm like, oh, well, how nice. I don't even know what that is, but okay, that's great. So it's now the year 2003. It's February 23rd of 2003. So it was about 21 years ago, last month. So we go to his Kung Fu studio, and I'm expecting more of the same because, and it was, until it wasn't. And then we did the attunement, which for those who don't know is a sacred ceremony. So he does this attunement, and I'm feeling weird. And I'm thinking, man, it must be something I ate for lunch. I'm feeling really strange. So I remember the end of the thing is over. I feel really disoriented. I put the chair back in this car and drive home. And we're driving home, and I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling weird. I don't know. It must be something. It must have been that chicken salad did me in. So I get home, and to my extreme surprise, I can see dead people. And I'm like, what is going on? And at very first, my brand new husband of only 1 month can see them too. But within a day or so, it fades away. And I'm like, this must be some bizarre side effect from this Reiki thing, right? Because I don't know. And so his starts to go away, but mine doesn't. And I'm still seeing dead people. And at first I was just mostly seeing them, and then they started trying to talk to me. I guess they gave me a little while to acclimate to their presence. And I'm like, oh no, we cannot have this going on. So I called the Kung Fu guy, and I'm like, hey, Kung Fu guy, we have a problem. I am now seeing dead people. And he said, are you really? I said, yes, you did your thing, and I've got dead people. And like, they're not going away. And he said, really? He said, well, I've been doing this for, whatever, many years. He said, I have never known anyone to become psychic from a Reiki attunement. He said, it just not how that works. And he said, I don't actually even know anyone who's psychic. He said, so it's probably part of your life path. Good luck with that. I'm like, okay. So I don't know. I'm thinking, all right, so I'm like, maybe it'll just go away. I'll just ignore it. So at first, that's what I did. I just tried to ignore them, but they kept talking. And I finally just said, oh gosh, okay. So I started talking back. I was like, look, I get it. You need something. You need like clergy, a psychic, you need a detective, you need something. I am a computer nerd. I can offer you nothing. Absolutely nothing. I don't think any of you people need websites or billing systems or e-commerce. So you're just going to have to go find somebody else who can actually help you, not me. And they just most of the time would go, oh, like, you're no help. And that's pretty much how that would go. So it went like that for about 3 months until the day that I had a change. And I was getting ready to go to bed. And this lady comes running in the room, and looks like she's from probably the 1600s. She's wearing some different kind of garb. And she starts yelling at me. I'd never had anyone yell at me. At this point, they'd all just try to talk or mumble. And so she's yelling, and I don't even know what she's saying because she's hysterical. And so I ended up saying, okay, ma'am, I cannot, I'm trying to give her my spiel. She's not having it. She's not listening to my spiel. So I don't know what to do. My husband walks in, and he goes, what's going on? I said, I've got this dead screaming lady. He goes, oh, that's not good. I was like, no, not good. Can't get this lady to listen to me. She's screaming about murder. I don't know if she thinks I murdered her, or she was murdered, whatever she's talking about. I can't even understand her because she's so hysterical. I said, he goes, what do you do? I said, I don't know. What do you do? I don't know. I have no idea. I can't make her leave. She's not even a physical person. It's not like I can throw her out the door and be like, yeah, you're out of here, lady. So I'm sitting there, and she's just continuing to be hysterical. And I don't know what made me say it, but I was thinking in my mind, I was like, God, I need an angel or something. And no sooner had I thought it than a gigantic angel appeared in the corner, swooped down, and took this lady. And my husband was sitting beside me, not knowing what to do. And he goes, "What just happened?" And I said, "Why do you ask?" And he said, "Because a gush of air just went by me." And I said, "Well, that's because a giant angel swooped down and took this lady." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yep, really. First time I ever saw an angel." So then I was thrilled. Not because I saw angels. I was thrilled because I had an answer to dealing with these dead people. So every time, wherever I was, I saw a dead person come in. I was like, "Ah, God, I need an angel." And an angel would swoop in and take them. And I thought, okay, this is very strange, but I have a solution to my problem. I do not have to talk to dead people anymore. I just have angels take them away. Until the day that I was walking through my kitchen and I realized there was an angel standing in the dining room. And I was like, "Oh, there's an angel. Oh, what is the angel doing here?" I was like, "Is there a dead person here? Maybe there's a dead person." And so I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't see any dead people. There's just an angel. And it's just standing there very peacefully. I'm like, okay, thank you. Carry on. And next thing I know, I'm seeing angels everywhere. I'm seeing them everywhere that I go. And I'm seeing them around people. I'm seeing little, what look like children angels with children. I'm seeing all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I have somehow acclimated myself to seeing angels everywhere. And so I said, okay, this is all right. I was like, this is okay. This is strange, but okay, because, I probably, if you'd asked me, do you believe in angels? I would have probably said, well, I don't know. I guess, yeah, sure. But now I'm just living this. So I'm thinking somehow that I can just, this is just my own personal spiritual experience and nobody needs to know about this. But slowly the angels started to talk to me and interact with me. So, and next thing I know, I'm feeling really strongly guided to do Reiki with other people. But this had never happened before. So in 2001, after I took Reiki, I'd never felt guided to really work on anyone else. I just worked on myself. And then, even after I took the class, I still didn't feel guided to work with other people. And the next thing I know, I'm feeling this urge that I can't get past. And I'm thinking, I'm a computer nerd. Why would anybody even, how would I even do this? Or how would I let people know I do this? Or, this is just too weird, in 2003. So what I did was I bought a bunch of books on Reiki, which there weren't that many at the time, but it reached that point where it had just come out where people were actually publishing the symbols. Because when I took this class they had said, oh, these symbols are sacred and secret, and you should never, don't like write them down and memorize them and never show them to anyone. Eat your paper or whatever, it was like that level. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy, but all right, I'm never practicing this with anybody, so it's fine. So then I start buying books. And I'm reading the books. And then I had this experience one day where I thought, well, if I'm going to practice this, I better memorize these symbols. And the symbol that's the longest is called distance healing. So it's like yay long. It's, and it's Asian characters, which is like obviously not my background. So I'm sitting there and I'm using my pad and I'm drawing the symbol over and over and over and over. And I'm doing this. I did it probably about 40 or 50 times. And then I put the notebook down and I picked up a book that happened to have pictures of Mikao Usui and Mr. Hayashi and Mrs. Tarkata. I didn't want to mix them up. And I flip the book open. I lock eyes with a picture of Mikao Usui, and I'm thrust out of body. And I'm in what appears to me to be the cosmos. Their heads are gigantic in front of me, and symbols start flying at me. And I'm like, whoa, and I'm back in my body. Whole thing seemed like it lasted 2 seconds. It was very quick. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, this was some sort of important communication, and I have not any idea what it was. No clue what I was just, and I just said, okay, God, if that was important, whatever was communicated, you're going to have to let me know. So I just sort of waited. Anyway, so nothing came. So at this point, I've developed a system. I have a lockbox in my head. I call it the X-Files. When something weird happens and I don't know what it means, I just say, okay, God. Okay, no answer. All right, it's going in there. So I'll just put whatever into the X-Files and I leave it there. And I say, if this ever is important, then you let me know. I'll go get out of the X-Files. But that way I don't think about it, if that makes sense. Doesn't run around in my brain. So I have this experience and I forget about it. And then later I am guided to do Reiki, but I have no idea how one does such things. Or especially in 2003, where do you do you get a business card that says I practice Reiki? I don't know. So So one day an angel comes to me and says, you need to go to the chiropractor. And I'm like, the chiropractor? Oh, okay. Well, there's a bunch of them in Carytown. So I get in my car and I drive around. I'm like, this one? Nope. This one? Nope. This one? Nope. I'm like, okay, I'm going home. So I go home. There's like 200 chiropractors in Richmond. You probably didn't know this. I didn't know this. So I'm like, well, okay, there's a lot of chiropractors. So I said, look, you're going to have to figure out some way to tell me which one of these 200 people it is. So the next morning, my girlfriend calls me and says, I met this amazing chiropractor. You've got to go to his office. And I'm like, okay. So I make an appointment. And when I show up, I realize, what am I going to tell these people I'm doing here? Like, what? So I have to fill out this form, and it says, of course, why are you here? I'm like, why am I here? I'm like, so I wrote down, I feel out of alignment. I didn't know what else to put down. I was like, I don't have back pain. I haven't been injured. I have no real reason to be here. So it turns out, that I'm laying on the chiropractic table and I look up at the chiropractor and I can see his third eye's open. I'm like, oh, he's psychic. This is the guy. And so I thought, well, I can't just blurt that out. That's going to sound weird. So I wait till the second session and then I blurt out. I was like, I can see your third eye's open. And he's like, oh, I've been waiting for you. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I'm glad. So what ends up happening is I end up working there. They offer me their treatment room. And then I start meeting people, and people send more people and more people and more people. And I get to the point where I'm booked out, and it's just word of mouth. And I don't even have a name. Like, I'm just called Ellen the Angel Lady. And I'd go to things and people would go, wait a minute, are you the Ellen? I'm like, yes. So my assistants now tease me. They call me the Ellen because that's what people would call me. And so that went on for a while. And then everything changed in 2011. I got a message from Archangel Michael. He said, you should be on the radio. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know anybody in radio. I don't know how anyone would even get on radio. I go do what I do. So I go to pull Wikipedia up. What's going on in the world of radio? Like, how does radio work? And then I realize, oh, radio is run by conglomerates now. I'm like, well, I don't see how this works. I don't know how this would work. So 2 days later, a radio station CEO calls me and says, I heard you speak. You should be on radio. I'm like, what the heck? So that year, that following year, that was the end of 2010, 2011, I start on radio. And I'm on a talk show in Seattle, Washington, that's broadcast on an FM station. And I think that's the only place that I am. And then all of a sudden I start getting calls from people in weird places like Australia and Europe and islands I've never heard of. And I'm like, how is this happening? How are these people even hearing this broadcast on FM? Well, there was this thing called podcasting. Well, I had never heard of this, and I didn't know, but I was one of the earliest like paranormal podcasts. And so next thing I know, that year, I go from being unknown to all of a sudden flipping. I had 90% of my clients and students were in Richmond and 10% were outside the state or country, to the complete reverse in 1 year. And so it was crazy. And this talk show, which I was not on, I get the calls, these random calls from the CEO guy going, something's going on with you. And I'm like, what is it? He goes, we got some weird stuff happening with you, because people are showing up at the radio station. I said, what do you mean showing up? He goes, they're showing up to meet you based on nothing more than your name. He said, we haven't even aired a show yet. And he said, they think you're here because, I guess that's how it would have worked in the past. I didn't realize I was being broadcast piped in from here. So he said, look, you're something, there's something about you. He said, this just doesn't happen. I've done this for 25 years. This doesn't happen. I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. Sorry, people are showing up to meet me and I'm not there, So by the end of that year, I became the #1 talk show on that station. And it was exploding. And he would call me and say, somebody has called and they like you so much they've offered to buy airtime so you can be on twice a week. And I'm like, what? I said, well, thanks, but I can't produce more than 1 show a week. So, it just doesn't work. So toward the end of that year, I was told, Archangel Michael came to me one night and he said, do not sign another contract with the radio station. I was like, okay, that's weird. So I tell my boyfriend, his name is Jeff, He says, I said, hey, I'm not supposed to be at this radio station anymore. He said, what? He said, you're so successful. This is like blowing up for you. Why would you leave? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. Archangel Michael just said, don't sign it. So he goes, I don't know. I don't think that makes sense. But he's not super metaphysical, right? So he doesn't understand. And so the next night, I'm in bed, I'm asleep. Archangel Michael wakes me up. He says, do not sign another contract with this radio station. I'm like, okay, all right. I have no idea why, but okay. So the next day I have to call this CEO guy who recruited me, and now I'm the number one, and I have to say, I'm not coming back. And he's like, what? Why? And I said, I am being guided not to do something else. But he's like, you're sabotaging your career. I'm like, well, how do you explain this? I was like, sorry, I'm whatever. So it turned out, I found out by December, I was pregnant at 43. I was having a baby. I spent a whole lot of time experiencing morning sickness. I don't know why they call it morning sickness. It should be like all day sickness, because that's how that went. So there was no way I could have ever produced anything. I was just basically spending a lot of time, throwing up. So I have a baby, and that changed everything. And so this baby was like my whole world. And so what I did was I didn't even work for a couple of years. I just took care of this fantastic little crazy fairy that they gave me. And then when she was about 2, I started working again, but I went back to just doing sessions over the phone or on Skype, wherever the person was. And I would just do it in the morning on Saturdays. My husband would take her to the Children's Museum, and then I would have time. And so I kind of just disappeared a little bit. I had advanced students who studied with me, and I had been teaching Reiki. Reiki with the angels is my modality. And because what happened was people started just showing up and saying, I want you to teach me. I feel like you're my teacher. And I'm like, I don't have a course of study. I'm not even a Reiki master. And they're like, and Archangel Raphael said to me, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, yes, you are. I was like, I'm not. And he said, do you remember that experience you had? Remember the one where I saw the book and went out of body and all the things? That was my attunement. That was my Reiki master attunement. And I said, okay, well, that's weird, but let's say for the sake of saying that is true. I am a Reiki master through this out of body experience. I said, I still don't know how to attune anybody. And he said, that's okay. I'll teach you how to do it. And so the attunement style Reiki with angels comes from Archangel Raphael. And so I had been teaching that for a while. I had people shadow me. I taught here locally in Richmond, and then I've got the baby, and then, I'm not teaching as much. And so that went on until the pandemic. And then around the pandemic time, I'm told, you need to start teaching again. I'm like, in a pandemic? You want me to teach in a pandemic? And they said, you're going to teach online. I said, okay, how am I going to teach online? They said, teleconference. I'm thinking, what? Teleconference? Because from my experience, teleconference was a giant, round, weird phone in the middle of a conference table with everybody talking all over each other. I'm George from accounting and Helen from marketing. And, I was thinking, you want me to teach on something like that? And they said, no, you're going to use a different system. So I found a system where I could actually pair people together, like one-on-one, and they could work together. So I started out with just me, and I think it was 6 people, because I hadn't been around, right? I had been taking care of my little crazy fairy. And so, so I hadn't been around really, and it's 6 people. The next month it was 8, the next month it was 10, the next month it was 12, and it just continued like that. And so then I ended up with advanced students. And anyway, now we're at the point where it's somewhere between 25 to 55 students, and we teach every night of the week. We teach almost every day of the week, and we do some things on weekends occasionally, not too much, but we teach mostly to people in the United States and Canada, and then we have a European group, and we have an Australian group, and we teach to people. We're just getting people from Africa, which is very interesting. So I'm not the only teacher, though. A couple years ago, some of my advanced students said, hey, we can help you teach. I was like, okay, because I was telling them I was going to step back. I was feeling guided that there was something big coming that I had to deal with. And the big thing was going to require me to step away, but I didn't understand what it was. And that's how it is with premonitions. So I'll explain more about premonitions and psychic ability from my perspective in a minute. But my assistant said, well, what if we co-teach with you? And I said, guys, I don't make a whole lot of money from the teaching. I make my money from readings, not from teaching. Teaching is pretty inexpensive. It's a lot of work, not a lot of money, but whatever, it's what I'm guided to do. So I said, I don't have any money to pay you. They're like, we don't need any money. We just want to help you. Well, now I'm up to 35 assistants. I have assistants in, I have an assistant in Alaska. I have 3 attorneys, 1 medical doctor, 1 C-level executive. I have people who speak lots of different languages. If you've got, unless it's like Arabic, I got it covered. I've got people, we're a widely diverse group. I've got people young enough to be my children, old enough to be my parents, every ethnicity you can imagine, and all shades of religions and political spectrum you can possibly think of is in my one group. So we work as a group, a collective of allied professionals, and we co-teach as a team, and that frees me up to do other things. So what else am I doing? Well, I am recently the co-CEO of a television network. It's a forthcoming streaming TV network. So kind of think about Gaia. Anybody heard of Gaia? Okay. Think Gaia, but Discovery Channel level. That's what I'm doing. And so when I walked away from my corporate career, I never thought I would go back, because I thought, all right, I'm going to step out and talk about Reiki, which was super weird back then. Not so much weird now. If I tell someone I do Reiki, they're like, oh yeah, my cousin does that. My sister does that. Everybody knows somebody who does it, right? So now it's not even weird. In the beginning, I had to ask people, they were like, what? You do what? And I had to explain it. Now I don't have to even explain it. Even the psychic stuff isn't that weird. People say, oh, you do what? I'm a psychic medium. They're like, what does that mean? I was like, I talk to dead people. That usually is good enough. So I don't go into all the other details. But when I became psychic in that beginning, and I started seeing dead people, there were the dead people, then there were the angels. Then after angels were fairies. I did not believe in fairies, did not think fairies existed. Went to the first class I ever went to was a lady who was supposed to talk to angels, and I was super excited. And I was so excited that I signed up for a class at a retreat center, the Omega Institute, which is way up in upstate New York. I signed up for the class. They had no place to stay, so we had to pitch a tent. Now, you people don't know me, but I am not outdoorsy. So you had to really twist my arm we had to go buy a tent. We did not have a tent. So we bought a tent and we drove up there. It was raining. So we're pitching a tent in the rain to go see this angel lady, because that's how important this was to me. So we show up at our thing wet, because we're walking around in the rain, and we sit down, and I'm so excited to hear somebody for the first time who actually hears, sees, or feels angels like I do. But she doesn't talk about angels. She talks about fairies. And I'm sitting there and I'm just crestfallen. I'm like, oh my God, I drove all the way from Richmond to upstate New York in a rainstorm, stay in a tent to listen to a crazy lady talk about fairies. And so we leave, and I'm just bummed. I'm like, what a bummer. Not to mention, I still don't understand how anyone deals with bathrooms and tents. But anyway, that's another story. So I'm walking, and it's sunset. And as we're walking, this thing zips past me. And I'm like, oh, what was that? A hummingbird? Like, what was that thing? And I was like, uh-oh. And then it zips past me again. I'm like, and I stopped. And my husband goes, what's wrong? I said, there's a crazy hummingbird with the like rainbow colors flying around me. And he goes, what are you talking about? There's no hummingbird. I'm like, well, it's something. It's going real fast. And then it flies. This time it slows down, and it goes, and it's a fairy. And I'm like, I'm like, oh, God, fairies exist. I'm like, oh, no. I was like, oh, man. Because, I could maybe, most people believe in life after death. Most people could wrap their head around angels. Fairies, though, I'm like, fairies, freaking fairies. So that was it. So from that point forward, I started seeing fairies, and I realized they're pretty much all over the place. Because if you have a pet or a plant, you have a fairy in your home. And because they're the guardians of pets and plants, that's what they do. They're not required to show themselves to anyone. They'll choose. Like angels have to love us no matter how awful we are, but fairies are like, they're not into it. So it was fairies. So then after fairies, I remember I was on this retreat and I was sleeping, and I woke up and I could feel there was a being in the room. And usually it's a deceased person, right? So I look up and I see this thing that I can only identify as like the swamp thing. If you remember that from when you were a kid, it's like dark green and it's got gills and it looks like it has ivy on it. And I'm looking at the thing and it's looking at me, and I'm like, what is this thing? I'm thinking, a giant fairy? What is this? And so I'm just looking at it, and finally it just turns around and walks out. And I'm like, oh, that was weird. What in the world? I didn't feel like it wasn't terrifying. It was just utterly shocking. And I said, Angels, what was that? What was that thing? And he said, that's an ET. I'm like, what? I was like, ETs exist, and this one looks like the swamp thing? And they said, Ellen, ETs look like all kinds of things. And I'm like, oh, geez, Louise. I'm like, what are we talking? Star Wars, Men in Black? He's like, oh yeah, pretty much that. I'm like, oh God. Now I'm thinking, okay, now we're beyond the pale. We're now in this weird zone to such a degree that I can never tell anyone this. Like, I cannot share these things. And so then I'm thinking, yeah, I'm feeling guided at this point to like actually practice the Reiki. And the chiropractor's offered me his office. He's sending me people. It's very hush hush, it's just my name's being passed around. So I'm thinking I can get away with this. I can just do Reiki and not tell anyone. There's nothing, no funny business happening here, people. I'm just laying hands on you. So I'm doing that. So I'm laying hands on people. Most people fall asleep. And I remember this one lady, I was at her head and I was doing the Reiki, and she says, Ellen, what's going on? I said, well, I'm doing the Reiki. And she says, no, there are hands on my feet. I'm like, oh. So I looked down there and Archangel Raphael's holding her. I said, your ankles? She goes, yes, I can feel hands on my ankles. What is happening? And I said, don't worry. That's just Archangel Raphael. She says, okay. How do you know that? I said, I said, well, because I can see him. And she said, you can see him? I said, uh-huh. Yep, that's how that works. She's like, are you kidding me? Can you see other angels? I was like, yep, that's how that works. Yep, let me finish the Reiki here. So they kept outing me. Either people would feel angels, hear angels, or see angels, either while they were working with me or shortly after. And so it just kept outing me over and over, and I kept having to explain things. And so what I decided was that if I could ever get a grip on all this strange paranormal whatnot, that if I could figure it out, I would teach it, because it's such an odd life experience. And I remember thinking back to my days in art school. And one of the funny things that would happen to me is I'd go in and, we'd all be around the art students. And a lot of them were sort of new agey, because new age stuff and, art kind of they're close cousins. And they would say to me, what's your sign? I'm like, my astrology sign? And they're like, yes. And I'd say, I'm a Pisces. And they're like, oh, you're a weird Pisces. And they would say that to me every single time. And I thought, what does that mean? I'm a weird Pisces. And what it meant was I wasn't weird. Now I figured that out, because I wasn't weird like they expect me to be. I was just too normal. And still today, when I show up at things, people will sometimes come in and go, does anybody know where the psychic is? Where's the psychic? Is she here? I'm like, that's me. So I don't look weird enough to be psychic. When I show up at actual psychic things, everyone thinks I'm the hotel manager or something. I'm the event coordinator. They're like, oh, ma'am, could you get this mic set up? I'm like, I'm the speaker. They're like, what? You? I'm like, yep, it's me. So what I ended up figuring out was that psychics are a lot like artists and athletes. Doesn't that sound odd? But it's true. So artistic ability and athletic ability tends to run in families. So you tend to find, if you've got people who are musicians, you tend to find the kids are musicians or they're singers or whatever. If you've got artistic ability, you got an interior decorator, their kid might go off and become a painter or whatever. Psychic ability is like that too. When you got a lot of psychics in a family, you tend to have more other people who are born that are psychic. But just like artistic ability and athletic ability, most people are able, some people are gifted, and some people are challenged. I would be challenged in sports. My father was a tennis champion in the 1950s. He dearly hoped I would be good at tennis. That did not happen. Not good at tennis or any other sport. Not a sporty girl. I'm really, really good at art, though. That's why I got into VCU. And I can draw portraits. I can do portraits. So when I meet people, a lot of times they think initially that psychics are only special gifted people. But the truth is, most people can learn psychic ability. It's just a matter of whether you want to. And if you think about it like art and athletics, if you had never tried to play a sport, how would you know you could play it? If you never tried an art, how would you know you could do that? Well, with psychic stuff, people just assume either it doesn't exist, which is what I would have assumed before I became psychic myself, or that only certain people can do it. But that's just not true. Most people can play tennis, right? Except for me, not so much. But most people can play it. But not everyone's going to become a tennis pro, right? Or a golf pro or whatever it is. And that's the same thing with this. So we teach a lot of psychic development, and we teach it in intro, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And then we do specialty classes, and we do private mentorship. So we've kind of figured out how to take people from wherever we meet them, wherever they're at, and take them to wherever they can naturally go. And it's working. It's because when I was first guided to teach, I thought, is this even teachable? I don't even know if this can be taught. And what I figured out is it can be taught. Not only can it be taught by me, it can be taught by other people, because I have 35 other people who teach with me. So it's a repeatable process. So how do you teach someone psychic ability? Well, the first thing is you have to teach them what it is not. Because a lot of times people get in their mind what they think it is, and it's not that. I've met so many people who said to me, I have no psychic sight, don't have it. And then I can look in and see that their third eye is open. They have it. And what I realize is they don't understand that psychic sight comes in two different ways. One is seeing outside yourself. Like if I'm seeing dead people in the room with the living people, that would be one way of seeing. And that's like Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost, right? So they think that that's what psychic ability is. And it is that for some people. But for other people, you see in the mind's eye. And the only way you would know to do that is if you go inward and look at what I call the screen of the imagination. And so what we want to do is I'm going to do a little exercise with you. I'm going to get everyone into the zone, and then we're going to learn to find the screen of the imagination. Because if you can't find it, you can't use it. That make sense? Okay, so let's start. Angels, create the ideal sacred space. I'm going to put everyone in the zone first. Excellent. Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, let's work with each individual. Let's profoundly ground everyone into their bodies. Let's profoundly ground everyone into the present moment. Let's clear, balance, harmonize, and heal everyone's chakras in all directions of space and time. Let's clear, balance, harmonize, and heal everyone's meridians in all directions of space and time. We've got some people in here having a little bit of spiritual awakening stuff going on. So let's go ahead and do a very clearing on the Kundalini channel with grace and ease. Let's go ahead and unify the energy bodies. Let's clear debris from the auric field and backfill with divine intelligence. Let's isolate all cords, connections, and webs from anyone to each individual that does not serve their highest and best good. Deactivate them, dematerialize them, and backfill with divine intelligence. Let's clear all the psychic pathways as unique for each individual and make a strong high self connection. I'm asking my angels and guides to work the angels and guides of each individual here for the highest outcome. Amen. Okay, keep your eyes closed. What I want you to do is I want you to imagine a white dog with purple polka dots. The place in your mind where you see this dog is the screen of your imagination. The way that you use this screen is you make it blank. Blank is whatever color blank is to you. Black, white, gray, silver, whatever the color that blank is to you. And you have to let the impressions come into the screen so that you watch them like you'd watch a television show. Very good. About half this room is already psychic anyway. Probably a little bit more than half. Archangel Michael, why don't you put something in the screen, please? Very good. Just getting goofiness over there, I can see. Great. All right, everybody come back to the room, come back to the present moment. So many people are leaving your bodies. So profoundly ground them back in. So what we do when we teach is we first have to get everyone to understand what psychic ability and what it is and what it isn't, and let go of the Hollywood ideas or the supernatural things that they think it is versus what it isn't. And that is helpful. That gets you started. That's a primer. The second piece of it is to understand how psychics function. So think about athletics and art, right? Usually you can have someone who's gifted at something, like maybe they're good at basketball, but they might not be good at golf. Or maybe they're good at oil painting, but they're not good at sculpture. Does that make sense? Okay, psychics are like that too. So you have psychics who can tap into health. You have psychics who can see dead people. You have psychics who can see angels. You have psychics who can talk to animals. You have psychics who can solve crimes. You have all kinds of different psychics, and most psychics specialize in something. Like that's their thing, just like athletes and artists are really good at something, right? And how do you figure that out? Well, the same way you would figure out art. So if you wanted to figure out art, you could create a course for 2 months and try every kind of art there is. We're going to sculpt. We're going to do stained glass. We're going to make ceramics. And likely what would happen is one of these things would be something you're good at. But you probably wouldn't know until you tried it. Does that make sense? So we do the same thing with psychics. We take them through all the different ways of tapping in. And then next thing you know, something, boom, that's their thing. And oftentimes it's very surprising to people. We've had people take the class and they're like, yeah, I don't have any psychic ability. I'm just interested in this. I'm like, okay, buckle your seatbelt. I don't know what's going to happen. So one of my girlfriends, she comes and I was teaching psychic development. She said, I'm going to take your class. I said, you're going to take the class? As far as I knew, she wasn't into this. She said, I just want to support you. I said, I don't think you understand. If you take this class, something's going to probably open up for you. I don't know what that will be. Do you want that? Because I can't put this cat back in the bag once that happens. And she's like, no, I want to do it. She really didn't think that anything was going to happen. So we're taking the class. Nothing's happening. She's not picking up on dead people. She's not picking up on angels, not picking up on fairies. Nothing's happening till the end of class. And she calls me one day and she goes, oh my God, she calls me and she's out of breath. I said, what's wrong? She goes, I was walking. I said, okay, all right. How did someone bug you on your walk? She goes, no. She said, I was walking my normal route and all of a sudden this big tree in the corner and it spoke to me. She says, and I freaked out and I rushed down the street and I started calming down. I thought, okay, you're just being crazy. Tree couldn't talk to you. That doesn't happen. Next tree talks to her. So she ran all the way home and called me. I said, trees talk. So do bushes, by the way, just saying. I was like, apparently, I said, you got some gardeners in your family? Some like really gifted people? She said, yep. On my dad's side, I said, yeah, they're all tapped in. I said, that's how natural medicine came to be, is there are people who could communicate with the plants and the trees and the animals, and they were told what to use. Use willow bark for pain, use etc. That's how natural medicine came to be. It's not well understood that way today. But the people who are very good at herbalism and naturopathy, if they do it intuitively, they are communicating with these elements and they are understanding how this all goes together. So she said, I didn't even know this was an option. I was like, well, I don't really bring it up because it's not like a thing we talk about a lot. But one of my assistants, she's a tree communicator. She got out, she called me and said, I'm kind of afraid to tell people this. I said, well, I mean, there'll be people who don't understand it, of course, just like there are people who think all psychics are frauds or schizophrenic or whatever they think. I said, but you need to be you, and trees is your thing. So she starts making videos and puts them out on TikTok. She's got over 60,000 followers. I'm like, it's a thing. So what we've figured out along the way is that if people actually apply themselves, they can figure this out. But we've also figured out that if you do figure this out, you're never going to be the same person you were before. You're going to be altered in a very material and significant way, and probably in some way that's highly unpredictable for your life. And you won't even know what the thing is. And once it happens, it's going to be a journey that is fantastical, and it's going to take you places you could never imagine yourself going. And that's what's happened for me. My life is so utterly different than what I thought it was going to be. I thought I'd be a chief operating officer one day. That's what I was studying, taking classes to go get my MBA, and then I became psychic. And I thought, well, I don't think there's a course of study in this. I guess I'll just have to wing it. So where am I with all this today? So about a year ago, I was giving a talk in Virginia Beach, and a fellow comes up to me and he hands me a business card and says, hey, I've got a podcast. Would you be on my podcast? I'm like, sure. So if people ask me, I pretty much universally show up at whatever. I figure there's a divine order to it, and someone thinks I need to be there, then I probably do. So I go on this guy's podcast, but I have no idea that he's a television producer because, well, why would I think that, right? So afterwards, we stay in touch. I find out these people are in television, and then they asked me to do a reading, and I was picking up on a television network, and I said to them, I'm seeing this, and this is what I'm picking up on, and et cetera, et cetera. And so one day, I get a call from this guy, but 3 days prior, Archangel Michael came to me. He comes to me and gives me messages about things. And he said, when the TV producer calls, be open-minded. And I thought, well, I'm pretty open-minded. What in the world would he be asking me that I wouldn't be open-minded about? And I thought, it must be a haunted house show. Because I would not want to do that. That would be of no interest to me whatsoever. And I'm thinking, it's a haunted house show. That's what it is. And so he calls and we're talking, and he brought up, I said, how are things going with the network? And he goes, yeah, I'm stuck. I said, what are you stuck on? He goes, I'm stuck on the technology. I said, you mean to make the network function? He goes, yeah. I said, well, you probably wouldn't know this about me. About 20 years ago, I was a tech executive. I said, I don't know anything about television technology, but I know technology in general. I said, why don't you tell me what you're doing? And so he starts answering questions, and I realized very quickly he literally knows nothing about technology. So I started giving him the basics. I said, you have to do a build or buy analysis. I said, and here's what you need to look at. And as I'm talking, he's just sort of flabbergasted, I guess, because he didn't know that's what I did. And why would I bring it up? Most people don't care what I did. They just want to know about psychic stuff. So he says to me, do you remember what you told us in the reading? I said, no, I don't remember most of my readings. What did you tell me? He said, you told us we had to find this third person, this third business partner, and this person was key. He goes, I think it's you. I was like, what? I said, well, I haven't held a corporate job in 20 years. I can't, I don't, and I know literally nothing about television. I barely even watch television, not to mention understand anything about the underlying technology. And he says, no, it's you. He's like, I'm sure of it. It's you. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'm flattered. Thank you. I have to talk to my husband. And I'm thinking, there's no way my husband's going for this. So I get off the phone with him and I go downstairs to my husband's office. My husband's a technology director and he works in computer security. Very level-headed. I'm a glass half full kind of girl. He's a glass half empty kind of guy. So our glasses match pretty well. So I tell him this. I said, hey, I talked to Will, and Will wants, they want to do this television network. He wants me to come in. He goes, are you gobsmacked? He's like, you haven't held a corporate job in like 20 years. I'm like, yeah, yep, I already said that. He goes, Ellen, you can't do this. I'm like, yeah, of course. This is bananas. This is bananas. What am I thinking? I was like, yeah, I'll just tell him next time I talk to him. Thanks, but no thanks, whatever. I'm flattered you would think of me. I'm going to move on. So I go back upstairs. About an hour later, my husband comes up. He goes, hey, yeah, okay, I was a little negative. He goes, why don't you talk to me about this thing again? Let's start over. I said, here's the thing. I don't know enough to even say I could help these people or not. I said, I literally know nothing about this. I said, so I would have to start from absolute scratch, looking at the basics of the technology to even know if I could help them, which, who knows? So he goes, oh, okay. He's like, I said, well, he goes, well, maybe you seemed a little interested in it. Maybe you should whatever. He's trying to be glass half full guy, right? And I'm like, okay. So I start researching it. And then I go back and I talk to him. I'm like, I found out this and this and this. He goes, oh, that's interesting. So we have another conversation. Every conversation I get deeper into technology, but he's in technology too, so we can talk the same language. And by about the fifth conversation, I said, I can do this. I can make a television network. And he's like, oh my God. And I said, yep. I said, now it's time to meet these people. So he says to me, he had not met them. He just had heard through me. I'd met them. And so we agreed. They lived in Norfolk. We live up here. So we agreed to meet in Williamsburg, obviously, because it's in the middle. So we're driving down there, and Jeff, my husband, says to me, we're not going to start a business with these people or anything. I said, yeah, and of course not. I mean, you've never met them. Of course we're not going to start a business. I said, but I'm interested. So I'll say to them, well, I'm interested because I am. And then you'll say, well, we need to go home and think about this. I've just met you people, or something to that effect, right? Some sort of polite way of putting them off. So we go and we meet them. Jeff instantly likes them. He doesn't instantly like anybody. And we're talking and we go through the different ins and outs. I'm like, here's what I found out technologically, blah, blah, blah. And they say, here's what we figured out, blah, blah, blah. And we put all our heads together. And then the time comes where they say, okay, do we want to do this? Do we want to actually do this? And I say, well, I am interested. Jeff, how do you feel? And Jeff says, I think it's great. You guys should all do it. And I'm like, what the heck? So that was a year ago on January 14th. In December, I got a message from a guy I did not know, and he says, hey, I'd like to talk to you about a television show. Well, this had happened pretty frequently because we're out there a little bit, and television producers had found me, and they're like, hey, we want to be involved in your thing. And I said, okay, well, we're a soft launch, and we're in a platform phase, and I'm out there now as the CEO, so I get these various sundry messages. So I figured he's just one of these guys. So he says, hey, this is what I want to do, whatever. So I say, hey, call me. Because I figure, every relationship's another step in the right path, even if I don't have anything for him right now. So he calls me and we're talking, and I don't know what he's talking about because he's not talking about anything that would make sense. And I finally say, hey, are you calling me personally or are you calling about Ethereal? He goes, I don't know what Ethereal is, which is their television network. And he says, I'm calling about you. And I said, okay. I said, well, what would I'm thinking he must want a reading, right? Because no one can book me right now. And I'm thinking, oh, dude wants a reading. I said, what did you call? He goes, I'm calling you because I want to make a television show with you. I said, for Ethereal? He goes, no. He's a CEO of a movie studio. You picked up on that, did you? Not any movie studio. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me about this movie studio. He's like, yeah. I'm like, we were talking like Tyler Perry. He goes, no. I'm like, oh, not like that. He's like, no, bigger. I'm like, oh. So the former C-level executives at Paramount, Disney, MGM have come together to form a new movie studio in Montana. huge, huge. And they haven't got it all worked out. They haven't built it yet. So they're doing television shows that they think will, have big audience appeal. And they were looking for an angel communicator, someone who does angels. They were like, the trend says angels. Okay. All right. So he said, we found you. And I'm like, well, okay, that's weird, but all right. And so I said, well, here's the thing. I said, you are a very, very big enterprise. I'm a very teeny tiny little micro business. I said, we're trying to get off the ground. So he said, well, but I'm a very big thing. You should be with my very big thing. I'm like, yes, I know, but my very little thing is very important to me. And so he said, okay, well, let's talk again. So a couple days go by and I decide, I'm not doing this thing with this guy. He seems like a nice guy, whatever, but my thing is important. So he calls me a couple days later. He says, I didn't get your legal agreement. I said, yeah, I'm not going to be sending that to you. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm not going to do the show. He said, you're not going to do the show? I don't think this guy gets turned down a lot. I don't think it happens. So he says, wait a minute, but we're this big ta-da. We're ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. I said, yes, I know, but my thing is important and it's a micro business. It's probably so small that you can't even relate to it, but it's very, very important to me. And I've made commitments to people and I need to do this thing. So he goes, all right, well, tell me about your thing then. I said, okay. So I started telling him my thing. And he says to me, he goes, we're on the phone. He says, I know you can't tell, but I'm actually very excited. And I thought, about my thing? You're excited about my thing? Okay. I was like, cool. And so then he says to me, so what if we helped your business get off the ground? Would you make a TV show with us? And I said, yep, I'll make a TV show with you. So in January, we started a company with this guy, movie studio guy, and now we've got the backing of a gigantic enterprise behind us. And we're gonna create something that is worldwide and very, very impactful. And I'm lucky enough to be co-CEO with this guy now. So I gave up half my position, but I gained so much more. It's one of those things where you give up a little bit to get a whole lot. And so we are auditioning people, and we're going to hopefully launch on TV in a few months. So that's what's going on. So we're looking for people who want television shows, people who want to do video podcast, people who want to do video blogs, people who want to live stream classes like Tai Chi and yoga or meditation. We're looking for all kinds of people, and we're auditioning now. So if you want to audition, I'm your gal to talk to. So anyway, we're very, very excited. And once we get it launched in English, we're going to launch another one in Spanish. And we're just going to keep on keeping on. So it's very exciting. All right, I want to open the floor to questions because you seem like an inquisitive group of people. Yes, ma'am.
So if you could come over to the microphone so that people online.
What is the name of your network? The small thing?
It's called Ethereal.
Ethereal.
Yep.
Anybody online, raise your electronic hand so I can see it.
I know some of my assistants are on there. Yes, ma'am.
Metaphysical question.
Mm-hmm.
When you did the exercise, I'm still just getting like clear sentience and clear cognizance rather than seeing.
Okay.
So is that still
Psychic?
removable, or do I need to work on seeing more?
Only if you want to see.
Only if I
So,
want to see.
so from my perspective, there are 4 primary psychic abilities and 4 secondary psychic abilities. And the 4 primary are psychic sight, psychic hearing, psychic feeling, and psychic knowing. And the secondary abilities are psychic smell, psychic taste, psychic touch, and telepathy. And you can have, for people to be professional psychics, they need usually 2 of the primary abilities working, but it doesn't have to be sight.
Oh,
There
okay.
are plenty of people who are perfectly psychic. Some of my assistants do not have psychic sight, but they're psychic enough to assist me and to teach, because feeling and knowing, or feeling and hearing, that's enough. You don't have to
Beautiful.
see.
Thank you, because I'm a feel, hear, and know.
There you go. You're good.
So not seeing it, but I knew it was there.
Yeah, if you want to see, you can figure it out though.
Yeah.
Sometimes, psychics are pretty sensitive people, and a lot of times we're light workers. And light worker is the term, I didn't make that up. It's just a generally accepted term in the New Age community, but it means a person who's here on divine assignment. They're not just learning their own personal life lessons. They're here to actually do something. They're here to maybe to teach something, or lead something, or inspire people, or whatever it is. And the light workers have tended to incarnate a whole lot more than just the average humans. And they've usually incarnated in difficult circumstances. So when I first started doing this, one of the things I had to do to step out was I had a lot of fear, and I was terrified, and I was afraid of, embarrassing my family. I was afraid of I was like, I'm just going to destroy my corporate career. That will be, I have to let that go. Little did I know it would come back around the way it has. Anyway, so, but I kept having visions of past lives where I was stoned to death, hung, beheaded, burned at a stake, thrown into water, pretty much just insert bad death here. And they were all because I was some sort of version of weird. Sometimes I was an herbalist. Sometimes I just had red hair and freckles. God forbid you be in the whatever, you're considered a witch. Sometimes I wasn't even I was like psychic. And so I was, taken by the powers that be to be utilized as a psychic or an astrologer or a whatever. And so it's kind of harsh on this planet. Pretty much universally, if you're different equates to problems. You're going to be, basically, in certain ages, if you were considered to be psychic, you were also considered to be a witch. And I still experience that. Like, I have a neighbor who told everyone in my neighborhood I'm a witch. And when my daughter turned 5 and she started going to kindergarten, I walked her to the bus, and everyone was like, "So you read tarot cards?" I'm like, "No, I don't. I don't read tarot cards." And I had like 6 people ask me if I read tarot cards. And I finally was like, "Why do these people think I read tarot cards? I have nothing against tarot cards. I just don't read them." And they're like, "What do you do?" I said, I talk to dead people. I don't, for the muggles, that's what I tell them. They can handle that, like talk to, they might think it's weird or whatever, but like their little brains can, like, if I give them the whole thing, it's just like, oh, send them on tilt, So anyway, it turned out this lady thought I was a witch, a tarot card reading witch. I was like, I don't have anything against witches either, but I just don't happen to be one. So that was strange. But anyway, it's tough. So one of the things we have to do, light workers, many of them, is you have to clear a lot of past life trauma in order to step out. So that's how that goes. Any other questions?
I have a serious question for you. Would you find, how does your practice fit into the concept of multidimensional physics? Basically the concept that we live in several dimensions at one time. We can move from one to the next and actually look back and see what's happening. Because some of the psychic things that's happened to my life, I've been trying to explain them, as you're all aware,
Yes.
over the course of my life. And I just can't understand a scientific explanation for this unless there is a multidimensional facet that comes into place. What do you think about that?
Well, there is a multidimensional facet that comes into play. So remember I talked to you about how I said, okay, first I saw dead people, then I saw angels, then I saw fairies, then I saw ETs. Well, there's more. So then what happened was, I think I remember I told you I studied meditation. I loved meditation prior to having a child. Once I had a child, it's very difficult to meditate with a child, I found, unless they're not at home, then you can maybe meditate. But one of the things that started happening for me is I started having memories of past lives. I had no idea that was a thing. I heard of it, of course, but growing up in a Christian culture, reincarnation is not discussed. And so growing up, I don't know if I ever remember anybody bringing it up ever. I didn't really even hear the concept till I went to college, and even then I didn't really understand anything about the concept, just that there were some people that believed in past lives, and that was it. And so all of a sudden, I start having these memories of being different people in different times, but then it goes a step further. I go from, okay, Ellen's been Joe, and Ellen's been Martha, and Ellen's been these other people, to there's other Ellens in other time streams. And I start doing what I call time stream jumping. Now, I'll have to give you an example of this because it's kind of strange, but so buckle your seatbelts, people. We're about to go weird. So what happens to me is usually I'm either sleeping or I'm meditating, and I will time stream jump. And that means I go from this Ellen in this incarnation to another Ellen. Usually, there's exceptions to this rule, but I'll go to another Ellen where things are a little different. So in this time stream, I'm married to a guy named Jeff. I have a daughter named Penelope. Both my parents are deceased. Sometimes I'll jump into a time stream where I'm married to a different person. I have a different kid or multiple kids. I have my parents are alive. Sometimes one of them is alive and one of them is deceased. And then usually it lasts a little while and I'm back in my body. So let me give you an example. Jeff and I were taking our daughter Penelope to Virginia Beach. We're on vacation. It was night. We got a room with 2 double beds. So Penelope would go back and forth, sleep in my bed, sleep in his bed. He moves a lot and snores, so so anyway, she ended up in my bed. There was light coming in from the moon. I time stream jump, and I come back and I look down and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is weird. There's a little girl in here, and all I could think was my son must have brought this girl. And so I look over at the other bed to see where my son Peter is. Peter was my dad's middle name, and in this other time stream, my kid's name was Peter. So I look over to try to find Peter, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what time stream am I in? What? Wait a minute, I have a daughter in this one. Oh, this is the daughter. Okay, it's Penelope. So Penelope was Peter in the other one. Same hotel, same husband, kind of the same kid, but not really. So, different gender, same soul, different gender. And so that's what happens. When I time stream jump, every once in a while, I'm taller. Y'all see I'm kind of short. So there's some where I'm like 5'6", which seems really, really tall to me. And that in those, my mom doesn't smoke when she's pregnant with me. And so I end up a little bit taller. And there's one where I have a completely different life because when I was 10, my dad he worked for the Newport News shipyard his entire career. But he got offered to be vice president of a brand new shipyard in Florida. My parents flew down there to buy a house. And when they came back, my mom said, I don't want to live in Florida. I don't like Florida. We're not going. But there's another time stream where we do go. And because we go there, I end up oddly in entertainment. And I'll time stream jump. And sometimes I live in Hollywood. And I'm in the entertainment industry. And now, oddly, in this time stream, I am now in the entertainment industry. Just I'm a C-level executive in the entertainment industry, and in that lifetime, I'm an on-air talent. It's very weird. So the thing is, what I found out, because I'm an inquisitive kind of gal, right? I was a business analyst. I literally analyze things for a living. So what I end up doing is I applied all my previous corporate skills to this strange lifestyle I have. And so what I do is when I want to understand things, I start asking questions. So as I'm time stream jumping and I'm figuring out, oh my word, I'm like, angels, what is going on with this? Like, okay, I get it, fine. I give, there's multiple times, multiple whatever. So what they explained to me was, you're born with a path and a purpose and plans. Before you get here, you picked your parents, there's all kinds of stuff. When you get here though, and you're in the body, you have free will. So as you're going, think of it like a tree, there's a trunk, right? So every time you make a major decision that's off your life path, you shoot a branch off, and another branch, and another branch, and another branch. And your life, and you live out all these different time streams. So there's, Ellens doing all sorts of stuff. Many of them are psychic. Every once in a while, I jump into some that are more psychic than I am, or they're magical, or they've got some other, like I jumped into one time stream, and because all I can do is I can see through the eyes. I can't control the body. I can't make it do or not do anything. So I jumped into this time stream, and I realized instantly this gal is about to time stream jump at will. She knows how to do, like, I don't know how to do it at will. I can't just say, I don't have anything to do this afternoon. I'm just going to time stream jump. That would be fun. It happens to me. I can't control, I can't control it. It doesn't happen when I'm like awake. Like I'm not going to leave right now and be like, oh, sorry, I went somewhere else. But I can't control it and do it at will. But in that one, she could. And my thought was, oh my gosh, if you go, I'm already here. If you go somewhere else, how do I get back to the first one? And I was like, oh no. And then she jumped, and then I ended up back in this one. I was like, okay, whew, that could have been a problem. So the thing is, I asked the angels, why do we incarnate? Why do we have all these multiple time streams? Why is it so diverse? And they said, you guys can't learn your lessons in one lifetime. They said you can't even figure them out in one linear lifetime, not to mention, whatever. So what they show me is an arc, and they say there's a grand arc. And so you start out here and you incarnate as whoever, and then you become the next person, the next person, the next person, the next person. But each one of these individual people has a tree trunk with branches. So it's very, very, very multidimensional. And I've been asked this question before, which is, if there is reincarnation, where do you not go to heaven? And my experience has been that each incarnational self does go to the heavenly realm. Like this Ellen won't become another person. It's not like I die and I'm going to become Frank. This Ellen is from a particular high self or an oversoul and creates all the incarnational selves. And each of those lives out whatever they're going to live out. And then I go to the heavenly realm and I complete. That's a place of completion. There's beyond the heavenly realm. So in the heavenly realm, I meet all the people that I connected with here, that I impacted, and I go through my life review so I can learn all the lessons, why in the world did all this happen, and what occurred, and so forth. And I can go into all that in more detail if you want. And then eventually, when it's all complete, I will be reabsorbed back into my high self. And when all the incarnational selves in the grand cycle become reabsorbed in the high self starts over again and creates a whole new group. And it's just a cycle that keeps going. And my understanding is when that high self completes, which is I don't know when, it will ultimately be absorbed back into divine creator or God, whatever you want to call that. I use the word God, but you can call it whatever you want.
Ellen, this is really wonderful stuff.
Oh, good.
I forgot what I came up here to ask because I got so taken away by the multiple time streams. It's been my guidance for years that we each have about 1,000 plus or minus parallels.
Yes.
Which are doing exactly as you described in all the different time streams. Slightly different frequencies in this one.
Yes.
And that we are virtually every major choice we make in the course of this lifetime is representative to, just like you said, of a different branch we can go down and not go down. But if we don't go down in this one, we will in some other.
That's correct.
Right. And now, is this something that is part of the course material that you teach, this time stream jumping? Or?
No, I don't even know. I mean, no, this is more in the line of people understanding the nature of spirituality. And I would call this more sort of falling into the realm of spiritual awakening. So when I never gave spiritual awakening any thought. So this entire journey for me has been nothing but one thing unfolding after the next. It's just a constant unfolding. And every time I thought I had a grip on what it was, something else would happen. And then I would be like, oh my gosh, now we've got this thing. So for instance, I remember I was vacuuming. I was alone at the house and I'm vacuuming one day. And all of a sudden, as I'm vacuuming, vacuum cleaner shocks me. And I jump away and I'm like, oh, what happened? And then I realized that the shock was not in my hand. It was in my tailbone. And all of a sudden I'm standing there and I get another shock at my tailbone, and it's intense and it shoots up my spine and blows out my head.
Kundalini.
That would be what that is. Yes. And I had never heard of the Kundalini, and I start giggling. and I cannot stop. My husband's coming home to pick me up for lunch. He shows up to me, and I'm just this giggling mess of a person, and I'm not even giggling at anything. I'm just giggling. And he said, "What happened to you?" I was like, "The vacuum cleaner shocked me," and I'm crying, like, because I've got this, I look like. And he says, "If I didn't know you don't do drugs, I would think you're high." And I said, "I don't know, something happened." Anyway, he had read Autobiography of Yogi, and he was really interested in these topics. He goes, "I think you had a Kundalini channel thing." I was like, "I don't even know what that means." So anyways, that was the beginning of what ended up being a whole lot of various sundry awakenings. And the term for when I think of spiritual awakening, I think of this spectrum. So on the one end of the spectrum, you've got a human being that has some spiritual experiences, if they're lucky. The opposite end is a spiritual being that is having a human experience. And the middle is what I call spiritual awakening, the midpoint. And usually it happens, every once in a while it happens dramatically, but for a lot of people, it happens slowly over time. They have little things, and then all of a sudden they realize that they're living more as a spiritual person than they are as a human being. Like, I don't really identify much. Like, I know I'm white, I have long hair, I'm short, but I don't really think of myself that way. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think of any of you that way. When I see you like the Matrix. I see your auras, I see your energy system. I don't really think, is this person old? Is this person young? Is this person of this ethnicity? Now, was I like that before? Yes, I would identify, oh, this person is whoever and this person is that. It's different now. It's hard to explain. So go ahead.
The one other thing is that I was given guidance a few years ago that I'm very interested in your connection with angels, because I was told angels are sitting around like the Maytag repairman waiting to be called.
That's correct.
And that there's plenty available, that the supply exceeds the demand that we're making, and we could use a lot more than we have.
So I have several things to say about that. One is that's exactly correct, and I got the very same message that angels are available to all of us anytime, but we must ask. They cannot, by spiritual law dictates, they cannot intervene in our life unless we request it, with one exception. And that exception is if our life is threatened before its time. If the timing is not right, then even no matter how strange the circumstance is, the person will be saved. So I'll give you an example. I had a guy come to me and he was asking for a reading. And I said, "Sir, they're showing me that you are flying a twin engine plane and one of the engines went out." And he said, "Yes." And I said, "You're the only passenger?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "And you landed the plane?" He goes, "Yes." And he said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because I'm seeing it. Archangel Michael held the other engine up." And he said, "I've never told anyone this because no one would believe me." I said, "Well, naturally a plane would crash if one engine goes out, based on obviously physics. But in this case, he survived." I also had a woman I said, "You were in a devastating, horrible car accident, but not hurt." And she said, "I was." I said, "Do you remember what happened when the car started flipping?" And she said, "I know, I was in the middle of the car." I said, the angels lifted her out, held her suspended in the middle of the car while it flipped and flipped and flipped and flipped and flipped. And then the car stopped and it was completely trashed, completely destroyed, and she was not harmed. It was not her time. So, yes, ma'am.
I was trying to tell him not to turn the camera on. Okay, thank you. Well, why not? Anyway, so it's a kind of a statement and a question and all, and I love all the explanations that you gave because it kind of encompassed what I was going. Anyway, what I was going to ask, and a question that came to me this morning.
Yes.
And probably since yesterday. So we have all of these different spiritual experiences, like you said,
yes.
Spiritual, but we also have a plethora of spiritual modalities and traditions all over the world.
Correct.
Here on our side, in our corner, some are more revered, than others, and others are looked down upon, like you said, a witch. A
Yes.
witch could be anywhere. You could be in Africa, and if you're not a Christian, then you're a witch.
Right,
And in the
exactly.
traditional
Yep.
stuff, they're like, well, you're a Christian and you're a witch.
Right,
I'm
right.
saying all that to say I see things like Gaia popping up, and you have a new
Yes.
network and so forth. But what I'm finding interesting is when people are becoming woke, just like in religion, there are those people who are snake oil sellers,
Yeah, sure.
and there's people who have wonderful gifts.
Hmm.
And I believe that when I looked at the program before I showed up, that we all do have it, but in a lot of basic traditions like shamanism, and I know the word is overused,
That's okay.
but it was for survival.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I hear a lot of New Thought people saying, well, you have to get out of survival mode. Well, basic survival of a human being is shelter, food, mate to carry on. So that's
Yes.
primitive.
Yes.
And so I see all this awakening, but it's like it's becoming expensive to be awakened when you have
Yeah.
people who have these gifts and they have these abilities, and there's basic people who in a tradition would have gone to a shaman in a village to find meat or hunt or a mate,
Right.
but they have no access because our village is so big now that the shaman is. So is this, I say all that to say, is this something that your network is looking to fill a gap with in any
That
way?
is
Like
exactly
a PBS?
right. That is exactly
like a
right.
PBS
Yes.
of
Yes.
spirituality?
Yes.
Because there's so much snake.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen things on
Yes.
YouTube that people are just trying to get hits and they're just
Yep.
trying to get followers, and they repeat things, and people are just really maybe awakening or they're not awakening, but they have a real problem. But people are trying to give them this snake oil quick fix.
Right. So just so you understand, with my network, every single person that goes on the network has to go through me.
A vetting process, right?
I am the vetting process. Now, I can see somebody and say, oh, this person is authentically psychic. Whether that person would be good on television or not, I have no idea. I don't know anything about television. I don't know who's appealing on television or what the show format should be, but I can say this person is authentically psychic. And that's my job. So I'm the first gatekeeper. And if I say, yep, they got it going on, then I move them on to television producers who then say what they're going to figure out what to do with this person. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And it is, I guess the second part of it is, do you see, because of your network and Gaia and the other networks coming out, that it's not to say replace the church, but there's a space now where people don't have to, I'm not saying anything wrong about the major religions, but have to go into that type of setting so they can understand who and how they are under those,
Let me back up a little bit and explain that. So I get premonitions, and so I know things are going to happen in the future. I don't always know why they're going to happen or exactly how they're going to happen. I just understand really overarching themes, unless it's something they want me to do or not do. And they say, do this or don't do that. And then sometimes I'm like, why would I do this or not do that? Whatever. Okay, I'll do it. So one of the things they showed me several years ago now is that my job is I'm a way shower. And I need to show people, because I call myself the left brain psychic. Really, I'm a center brain, so I've good command of my left and right brain. But people don't generally go to art school and turn into C-level executives. That's not common, right? But I have that ability. I can switch back and forth between both. So I'm like, right now, last week, I was like hiring a chief marketing officer, and I'm also tapping into a curriculum we need to develop psychically. So one of the things that's happening is that we're now in the age of Aquarius and things are changing rapidly. I am not an astrologer, but I work with 6 of them. So they're constantly giving me, oh, I say, I sense this. And they're like, oh, yes, the stars say blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, great. I'm glad that whatever, Mercury's not in retrograde, or it is in retrograde, or who knows what it is, right? So they back up all the stuff. But what's happening is we're going to have a whole lot of people all over the world that are going to start to wake up psychically. They're going to start to, so everyone's moving up the spectrum. So when I look at the spectrum of abilities, there's blocked, intuitive, which is to me hunches and senses without control or specificity.
And then there's psychic, which is when you're at the low end of psychic, you may not have a lot of control, but about the middle of psychic, you can start to do readings because then you can get it on command and control. And at the high end, you're a teacher, you're a master teacher, or you're a spiritual teacher. And then the level after that is I call mystic, and that's where you start to unlock the laws of the third dimension. And then you put people who are like saints in that category. And then there's a demi-avatar and an avatar. So an avatar would be like a Jesus Christ, a Buddha, somebody like that. A demi-avatar would be like a Dalai Lama or somebody like that, someone at that level. So the angels told me everyone's moving up. So block people are going to become intuitive. Intuitive people become psychic. Psychic people are going to become mystical, and so forth. And I'm like, oh my God, and so what they showed me was, what do you think these people are going to do when suddenly they go from intuitive, which they can like live with intuitive, and all of a sudden they're psychic. I got a panic call from a guy in Australia, lawyer. He says, I'm walking down the street and I started seeing another lifetime, looked like Roman and whatever. He's like, I had to stop. And then all of a sudden it went away. And I'm thinking, and you decided to call me in the United States to help you with this?
Yeah, because there's not a whole lot. If
Exactly.
it was like 200 years ago, he might call his
right
church and hope he
right
doesn't get
right. He might call
burn
somebody.
or something.
So same thing. I got a call a couple months ago from a guy who goes, I'm a retired aerospace engineer. I'm like, okay, fantastic. How can I help you? He said, I'm seeing angels. I'm like, yep, I understand. He's like, do you think I'm crazy? I'm like, nope, I think you're psychic, and welcome to my world. It's a little easier if you're retired to wrap your head around. I was like, I'm here. I've got 35 other people. We will figure it out. You're going to be okay. So the thing is, they showed me that not only am I kind of training, I've got these 35 people. Eventually it'll be 50 or 60 people. I've got 35 now. And there are many other people that are spiritual teachers who are waking up to that, but they do not know how to bring that into the world. They feel suddenly a sense of, I need to teach something. I need to lead something. I need to inspire people in some way, but they have no clue how to do it. Because, if you said, I feel suddenly inspired to become an accountant, you would go and you would study accounting and you'd sit for the CPA and you'd open up you know what I mean? There's a clear pathway of how to do this. This career, yeah, how do you do this, right? So the way to do this is there has to be a place. There has to be a place where people can find people. This is the place. I've created the place. So that was my job, is create the platform. And the platform isn't just, I say it's television. Television is the vehicle, but there are many other pieces to it. So once someone's on television, you'll then be able to also find their book, their course. You'll be able to book them at an hourly rate, et cetera, et cetera. So all the pieces of the puzzle will be there. And because most psychic people are right-brained, they're creative people, these things do not come easy to them. Trying to figure out how to just get online appointment booking or get themselves in front of somebody. There's a company called Ingenio, and Ingenio has many, many websites. They have astrology.com and purplegarden.com, and they charge large sums of money per minute to talk to psychic people. Some cases $10 a minute. And that people go there. Why? Because they're a giant company who knows how to market and advertise like giant companies do. And so these people who are answering the phones, who are psychic people, are being paid like 25 cents or something. And so that's what's out there. So what I'm doing is creating the opposite of that. I'm creating something that's completely collaborative. Does that make sense? And so our job is to figure out how to create a platform to put out into the world that's multinational, that is multidimensional, and that serves the highest and best good of everybody. And one of my prime directives, they said to me, Archangel Michael said, you must capture the wisdom of your elders. Your elders are going to die and you're going to lose their wisdom. You must do it now. I'm like, okay, I go, all right, I'll find these people wherever they are. I was like, all right, so my prime directive is find my elders. capture their wisdom. Because if I don't, then my child's generation, my child's only 11, that wisdom will be lost. Because as you know, many people who are unusual, their families don't necessarily accept this, right? So there are people in just recent generations who have died and their families have destroyed their entire life's work because they thought it was witchcraft or weird or whatever. And they just wanted to be done with it. So anyway, yes, ma'am.
Just real quick, any intuitive insight from Michael or anybody else or yourself about the upcoming eclipse on April 8th?
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that one. I don't know much of anything about astrology. I'm not an astrologer, but I do know that I was supposed to be there, so much so that I told my husband we need to get somewhere so we can get to the eclipse. And I have a friend in Austin, so I thought maybe we'd fly down there, but geez Louise, the prices are like $3,000 for a plane ticket. So we're going to actually drive to Nashville, which is like on the cusp, and then we can drive out into the podunk of Nashville to see it. But for some reason, we're supposed to be there. So I'm doing that. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. I was curious about your audition that you were talking about because I have a couple of people who I think may be very interested.
Oh, wonderful. So we have an audition process. It starts out with a video. It's what's called a one-way video audition where you log in. Right now it's me. So usually it's actually someone better than me should be on there, but it ended up being me because I'm the one that set up the tech. So you'd go through and it'll ask you a question. I will ask you a question, but I won't really be there. It's just a video of me. And I'll ask a question. You'll have 15 seconds to think about it and 2 minutes to answer it. And it just goes through a series of questions. Actually, Susanna did it, so she knows how it works. And it's designed to figure out who you are, but also how you function on camera. So it's going to ask a bunch of weird questions too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what are you looking for?
What we're looking for is authenticity. Someone has to be authentically psychic or tapped into whatever their thing is, and they have to fall into one of 3 categories. Metaphysics, which is all things psychic, paranormal, and so forth, supernatural. They can fall into natural health, so it can be like a functional medicine doctor, an acupuncturist, a chiropractor, or it has to be something that I call uplifting content. I made up the term, but anyway, uplifting content is everything that it's not necessarily metaphysical, and it's not necessarily natural health. So, for instance, mindfulness, or sustainable communities, or I don't know, like social justice. Or, there's all kinds of things that fall into that. Everything life coaching falls into uplifting content.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. The link, by the way, is on my website. If you go to etherealtv.net and you go to the About, which is in the bottom, the links are there. Yes, ma'am. I know you. You look familiar.
Yes, we are familiar. Anyway, thank you so much for this. My brain is swimming. But my question is, do you see what you're doing in this grand vision and all that's opened up having some way of dealing with the pain and the suffering and the chaos in today's world in time, so it'd be before it's too late?
Well, it's not going to be too late in this time stream. I've seen some ones where it is too late. It's not too late here yet. I wouldn't probably be doing this if it was too late, because it'd be sort of a giant effort and then like it's all over. Wah, wah, right? Then it'd be like Ellen put in this huge effort and got thousands of people involved in this thing, and then it just like, So this time stream is going to be okay. Just remember that no matter what we see, that there are always life lessons involved, and not everything is as it appears. So I'm going to give you an example. I have a mentally ill sibling, and when we found out she was going to have a baby, my parents had already passed away, and no, my parents had my father. Anyway, she was going to have a child, and I was very, very worried about this, and I was just deeply concerned. And then on top of that, we found out the child was going to have Down syndrome and a heart problem, and I'm like, oh my God, she can't even take care of herself. Now she's going to have this child. And so I was just really upset, and I was praying about it, and Archangel Michael came to me and said, you do not need to be worried about this. I said, I don't? And he said, no. I said, why not? And he said, it's not a baby. I said, what What do you mean it's not a baby? And he said, that is one of her holy guardian angels has taken form in a human body to be her companion for the rest of her life. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And she's an angel. She's an angel. And so sometimes we just have to learn our life lessons through adversity. Sometimes it's difficult things that bring people together to create amazing things. And, you know, it's a long game. That's why we reincarnate, right? We can't figure it all out in this one. So just keep in mind that whatever you think you experience here, this is just a hologram. This is just a hologram. And therefore, it can be changed quite dramatically by people who understand how to change it. You think I know how to change it? I might know something about that. Yes, sir.
You do.
I do.
Time transit that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm recognizing that I am on a very specific 50-year time phase.
Yes.
Right now. Exactly 50 years from October 12th next year, 25. 50 years before that, I was recipient of a major downpour, which changed my life.
Yes.
And exactly to the day, 3 years hence, I was standing on the top of the Great Pyramid and sending energies of love to the world. And everything since then seems to have funneled me in a harmonic resonance.
Yes.
To the realization of my purpose.
Yes.
And I've been brought here.
Yes.
In the last 2.5 months.
Mm.
Not by choice, but by being chosen.
Yes, I understand.
And what you've been sharing made it very hard for me to stay seated.
Yes, I saw.
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing a book that now needs to be skipped from publishing and put into a movie. And it's about this story.
I might have some resources to help with that.
And yeah, what you've been talking about just electrifying me. So thank you. And what I'm also dealing with here is the realization that time as we know it is an abstraction, but timing is a very real harmonic commodity. And that's what's going on. It's not about time.
Yes, it's not about time.
Yeah.
Time is only a function of the hologram. It has to function in the hologram, just like day and night and hot and cold and male and female. We've got all these opposites in this particular hologram. There are other holograms where it's different. There are other holograms where there's no gender, there's no temperature, there's no time. Everyone's telepathic, but this is the one that we're in. And we're learning our lessons through this particular construct and this particular experience. And the timing of what's happening here, like one of the things, you know, as I'm going through and I'm putting together all the pieces of the puzzle that make a network, as you can imagine, it's a television network, people. This is like bigger than anything I ever thought I'd do in my entire life. And so I'm putting all the jigsaw pieces together, and the angels will say to me, we're sending more people to help you. I'm like, oh, that's great. Let me know where those people are, because I could really use some more help. And so a piece comes and a piece comes and a piece comes and a piece comes, and it's coming together the way it should. You're welcome. I've also found, I feel guided to just share, there are people who know they have a book in them, or know they have a movie, or know they have something, they have no idea where it's supposed to go, and they've been sitting on it. Because they're like, this is supposed to go into the world, but I don't know when or why or how. And it's because the platform it's being created now. And and the thing is, There's strength in numbers. That's why people group together in nations. That's why people group everything together, because there's strength in numbers. And so as a group, as a collective, and I've been trying to explain this to my partner, my co-CEO, who knows traditional business. This guy was a former Marine who became an investment banker, who became an entertainment industry executive. And he's, asking me these questions. He's like, okay, so what are we charging these people to be on TV? I'm like, nothing. We're charging them nothing. And he goes, what? How are we going to make any money? I said, people who are going to subscribe, that's how we're going to make money. I said, not only are we charging them nothing, we're going to help them make money. He goes, what do you mean? I said, most of the natural health practitioners and the metaphysicians are part-time workers, and not because they want to be, but because they do not have the structure. Like doctors have funnels. People have ways of getting people in. If you have a restaurant, if you're a dentist, you have ways of getting customers. How do you get customers if you're a hypnotherapist? How do you get customers if you are a psychic medium? So what we have is a pyramid. We've had lots at the top are these tiny, tiny few people, just a few dozen people who are worldwide known. And everybody at the bottom are the part-time workers who can't even work full time, can't even make enough money to pay their mortgage doing the thing that they're here to do. So I said, what we're going to do is we're going to take these people and we're going to figure each one of them out one at a time. So we're going to be a combination of I said, you have to keep in mind, these people are not actors. They're not actors. These are just people. I said, but we can take each one of them and we can groom them and figure out how to make them subject matter experts. I said, so we make them experts in their field. And that means we help them publish books, we help them publish courses, we help them create radio shows, TV shows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't think he was going to go for this, to be honest with you, because it doesn't really sound like there's a lot of helping the other people. Do you know what I mean? It's not a big emphasis on us making money. And he said, okay, all right, we're going to do that. And I said, look, I'm not opposed to making money. I don't have anything against that, but I understand what this is supposed to be. And so he comes back to me, and he's just a fountain of creativity. This guy is like unbelievable. I've never worked with anybody like him in my life. And so, so we balance each other out. And so I'm the visionary and he's the get it done kind of guy, and there's more are coming.
So we have a question on the chat.
Yes.
It says, can we have your website for your classes to sign up?
Oh, sure. It's my name. It's ellenmahloy.com. You got to stick the H in there. It's a spelling mistake from 2 generations ago.
I'll put it
Just
in.
saying.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Oh, you're so welcome.
Really. When I tell you each month we've been blessed, I'm not lying. Today was no exception, as I said. This was really wonderful, Ellen. Really, 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 really wonderful. So thank you so much. Next month, we have Joanne DiMaggio, who, has presented to us several times before on her books about reincarnation. This book is about the Beatles. And speaking of parallel timelines, I recently encountered a situation where an individual fell and hit his head and moved into another timeline. And in that timeline, which took this occurrence was about 5 or 6 years ago, the Beatles are still together. So that's right along the lines of what we've been hearing. But Joanne DiMaggio has written a book published this month, I believe, and we're going to be her first audience about it. And it's about how the Beatles have infused our whole generation with a sense of spirit, which is bringing us to the point that Ellen was talking about today. And so, thank you very much. The potluck lunch is on out there, and in May we're going to have Sandy Ward, who is going to talk to us about her work with ETs and so forth over several years, and so we've got a great lineup in the next few months, and I look forward to having everybody back. If I didn't say it before, anyone who is not on our list for our monthly flyers, if you'd like to be, please sign the yellow sheet at the table at the door, and you'll be on there, and we welcome you and welcome anybody who want to join with us. Thank you, folks. See you next month. The meeting is over. Namaste.
All right, I'll be closing the meeting. So we'll see you all next month.